Morning or evening or spend Let's have everybody back with us here with our Temperance Awakening. And today we're going to begin our vaping lectures. I'm just going to be getting into the introduction of things here. Actually going to be a second part to the introduction here. Got quite a bit of material to cover, and so we'll split it up and probably only have to do it in a couple of lectures. Should be able to finish the second part of the introduction. And yes, in the next lecture, we'll be able to finish it up then. But starting with the first part today, before we get started though, like if you are new to the ministry here, viewing it for the first time, we have an addictions help ministries that helps people with tobacco, alcohol, pornography, and also vaping, and also now vaping addictions. We can say, because I know vaping is connected to tobacco, but really isn't tobacco. But thanks, though, for coming and being with us here. And if you'd like to get our newsletter, we put out a monthly newsletter pertaining to those things like vaping, tobacco, alcohol, pornography. Our email address is there, temperanceawakening@outlook.com. Like if you're viewing this on YouTube or can see the YouTube details, because we do put this, I know, in a couple of other places, and some people might even share it on some other websites or places as well, which is wonderful. But temperanceawakening@outlook.com. If you'd like our free newsletter, you shoot us an email, say you want it for free. Of course, also I've wrote books. I'm a minister, like we are faith-based. I've wrote lots of books, like on commentaries. Commentaries on books of the Bible. But we've also now written a couple of books, like one about tobacco and one about tobacco, about to publish another one on alcohol. But we also have another book called Temperance Awakening, just a look at tobacco, alcohol, and pornography. That's more of a concise type book that just hits the high points of tobacco, alcohol, and pornography. So if you're interested in those, those will be there, as well as, like I said, other books that we've written kind of pertaining to the Bible. And they're all very cost-effective. None of them are expensive. I make no profit off of that at all. The only thing that you pay for is the cost of printing. What people have to pay for printing. Or to put it out like on Kobo. They're also on Kobo, the ebook reader. Like if you get those in an ebook format, you just pay for the cost. What has to be paid to Kobo to put them like on their website. And so appreciate that. Appreciate you taking the time maybe to look at those, to consider it. As I said, I make no profit off of it. All that we do here, we make it as cost effective as possible. Which is why, we have these lectures here, not charging anybody to view them. And so just want to be having a blessing to you. But you share this as well, share this primarily to young people, people vaping and all. I think it's going to be of a help to them. And now getting into our introduction here. And a new epidemic, is killing people. In the United States of America, the first death attributed to vaping occurred on August 23rd, 2019 in Illinois. The state's Department of Public Health announced this sad news, but they didn't announce the person's name to protect their privacy. They didn't announce their name, their age, their gender, or their exact location in Illinois. But since then, 40 more people have died from vaping-related illnesses up until the time of the publication of the book that we have, which I think was like either late 2020 or early 2021. The youngest person was just 13 years old, which really underscores the devastating effects that e-cigarettes are having on teenagers, particularly, really anybody, like we'll look at in a little bit. But especially teenagers, mostly young people, because most victims of vaping-related illnesses are younger than 35. The media reports alarming stories, almost on a daily basis about this vaping crisis. What damage to vapors' lungs has become so prevalent that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has coined a new acronym for it called EVALI, E-V-A-L-I. That stands for e-cigarette vaping-associated lung injury. And instances of EVALI are surging. As of February 2020, the CDC has confirmed more than 2,700 cases of vaping-related lung injury in addition to the reported deaths. After several days of high fever and flu-like symptoms, people suffering from EVALI rush into emergency rooms with shortness of breath and difficulty breathing. And like one 21-year-old young man in Utah had such severe lung damage from vaping that even a ventilator could not help him breathe. Physicians had to connect him to a machine that pumped oxygen directly into his bloodstream to keep him alive. And closer examination of his lung fluid showed that fat had clogged his white blood cells, not from the chemicals that he had vaped, but likely from the breakdown of his own lung tissue. And physicians thought that he might die, but thankfully he survived, and after a 2-week stay in the hospital, he went home. But vapors are dying, and their lungs are failing. And medical officials are still researching all of the damage surrounding, the health problems of vaping. Still researching, all of this thing that's fairly new. And so certainly got here because of smoking tobacco, which we won't go over like in our book, like we did in our promo, video that we did. We showed the book that we're using. It's called Quit Vaping by Brett Lamb, right here. Quit Vaping by Brett Lamb. A very inexpensive book. Encourage you to get it. But like in our book here, it goes through a section about tobacco, kind of the history of tobacco, how like a lot of people thought that e-cigarettes were a healthy alternative to tobacco, but we've already done tobacco lectures on here. That was the first thing that we did, so you can go back and view those if you want the history of tobacco. We've got a whole couple lectures there about it. But now looking though at the rise of vaping, because just like we said there, whenever e-cigarettes first hit the market in 2007, a lot of people thought that we had found a good high-tech solution to the world's toughest to break habit, which is, tobacco, primarily smoking, but, there's also people that dip tobacco, what people call just dip or snuff, and then there's chewing tobacco. Of course, also not just smoking cigarettes, but also cigars and pipes. And as a form of harm reduction, vaping was supposed to help chronic smokers quit, and thus avoid the cancer-causing tar in cigarettes. It even looked cool, some of these devices, they resembled flash drives and, required charging like other fun pieces of technology. And you've heard that, like people saying vaping is safer than smoking. E-cigarettes are better than regular cigarettes, but it isn't at all. Vaping is just a different form of smoking. And the latest scientific research is showing that e-cigarettes are just as bad as traditional cigarettes, maybe even worse. Smoking, kills people slowly over many years. But vaping, that's usually the fact, that's usually the cause with smoking. I know some people, like who use tobacco, they might die quicker than others, but most people are, a bit older. Like whenever lung cancer or some type of, tobacco-related illness gets to them. But vaping, though, can kill much more quickly, within just months, like 6 months to a year or two. And eval, it can strike anybody. It's mostly affecting, like younger people, particularly younger men, make up 70% of the cases, because that's, younger men are just, the primarily the demographic that use e-cigarettes. Like an estimated 15 million American adults use e-cigarettes, and there was a 75-year-old, like individual who did pass away from EVOLI symptoms. And 2 people over the age of 50 also died in Minnesota, like I think back around January 2020, or maybe, or sometime after January, February 2020, or maybe briefly before that, like in 2019. But according to the CDC, e-cigarettes are the most commonly used smoking product among teenagers now. And roughly 4 million teenagers have become vapors. Between 2017 and 2018, vaping increased among teenagers by a whopping 78%. And that trend has continued unless officials take serious action, which they have started, like at the present time of this. Like Juul had to quit releasing their e-cigarettes, and there have been starting to become some laws, thank the Lord, made against this. And like we said there, because of that surge in teen vaping, the FDA has already taken some action, to curb e-cigarette sales, and why things have happened. And CDC officials have been notifying healthcare systems and clinics across the country about vaping-related illnesses. And state health departments are issuing dire warnings. At least one major manufacturer has also stopped making fruit-flavored products. And so we have had, a decent start to some of these laws, and hopefully they'll continue. And, you're either like, tuning in here to these lectures because you want to quit vaping, or you probably know some people who do want to quit, or people that need to quit, which is why we encourage you to pass these videos on to people. Although before we dive, like I said here, we're going to have an introduction today, an introduction next in our next lecture. So before we really dive into the mechanics of, our therapeutic lectures of how to stop vaping, we're going to take a closer look at nicotine and vaping, and today we'll primarily look at nicotine now for a few moments. And so now looking at nicotine, because these e-cigarettes, also do include nicotine, if that's really what people want. Tobacco belongs to the nightshade family of plants, which on the nutritional side also includes bell peppers, cayenne pepper, eggplant, paprika, and tomatoes. The family also includes belladonna, a lethal poison, as farmers once used nicotine as an insecticide. Nicotine is an alkaloid stimulant that occurs in high concentrations in tobacco leaves. It's toxic and highly addictive. The CDC cautions that nicotine dependence is the most common form of addiction in America, and that nicotine is as addictive as heroin, cocaine, and alcohol, as it certainly is. And of course, nicotine, especially among young people, is often a gateway drug, because it lowers the addiction threshold like for other drugs such as cocaine, heroin, methamphetamines, and opioids. E-cigarette producers process the nicotine from tobacco leaves into vaping liquid, and their products can get nicotine into your system as fast as a cigarette. So, case in point, one popular e-cigarette brand brags that its vaping device has a nicotine content equal to that of a regular cigarette, and that it gets that nicotine into your system more than 2.5 times faster than competing brands. Well, some people can blow through one vaping pod or cartridge in just a few hours, which is a huge amount of nicotine to absorb that quickly. And nicotine in some vapes also goes down more easily than regular cigarettes. The vape juice in one brand, for example, contains nicotine salts. Unlike regular cigarettes, which can hurt the throat and lungs, nicotine salts don't cause the same irritation. According to an opinion piece in the New England Journal of Medicine, this advance in nicotine chemistry might make vaping even more addictive. And nicotine just in itself, is not healthy at all. It accelerates your heart rate, raises your blood pressure, and elevates your blood sugar levels. See, and that's why, like even smokeless tobacco, is not, it also isn't safe. That's kind of like back in the 70s and 80s. A lot of people thought that like dipping snuff or chewing tobacco would be safer, like than smoking cigarettes, but it's not. Of course, there are other things, like chewing tobacco and all can cause gum, cancer and so forth. But also, it simply contains nicotine. That's why people who also, if you, vape cigarettes, if you use e-cigarettes or like smokeless tobacco, like snuff and, chewing tobacco, you can still have heart problems, and have blood pressure difficulties, as many users, of smokeless tobacco do. Also, it can damage the brains and the lungs, of people in large enough doses. Of course, nicotine poison can kill a person. And now looking at the chemistry of nicotine in the body. So regardless of how nicotine enters your body, it travels through your bloodstream to your brain, where nicotine levels peak in about 10 seconds. This hit dissipates just as quickly, along with its associated feelings of reward, such as relaxation. Even though the chemical is a stimulant, smoking it feels relaxing, or as I said, chewing or dipping it feels relaxing, because it temporarily alleviates the addiction, which causes a surge of feel-good endorphins. But this surge lasts for a much shorter time than with other drugs, which is why a person feels the need, to like smoke a cigarette again, or vape again, or put in another dip or another chew, so often, to maintain the drug's pleasurable effects. And as a person continues to use nicotine, their body craves more and more of it, to feel the same as you did when you used it less. And that feedback loop causes the addiction and makes it harder to quit. And over time, nicotine can change the way your brain works, interfere with the normal function of your brain chemicals. Like for many people, long-term brain damages can affect their ability to learn, manage stress, exercise, self-control. And then at that point, they need to use nicotine regularly, just to use, normal brain function, which is why people stay, like on nicotine, until they pass away, until the nicotine kills them. But the problem here also with e-cigarettes is that it's more than just nicotine. Because in addition to nicotine, there's vape juice. When heated, produces an aerosol that may contain dozens of chemicals. They include benzene, formaldehyde, and propylene glycol, which is an ingredient in antifreeze. It also contains diacetyl, a chemical linked to popcorn lung, what's called popcorn lung, which is a debilitating, potentially fatal lung disease. The vape market features more than 450 different brands of e-cigarettes and only 8,000 flavored liquids, with hundreds more appearing each month. Mango, sounds tastier than menthol, and it might seem safe and delicious, but it's not. Inhaling flavor, is worse than eating them because our digestive systems are much better than our lungs at absorbing liquids. Because now there's liquid going into a person's lungs. Even the Flavor and Extracts Manufacturers Association, a not-for-profit organization that works with government officials to ensure the safety of flavoring substance, says it is false and misleading to claim that food-grade flavorings are safe to vape, because they're not. And just as we've been mentioning, like many media stories have reported, manufacturers create flavors especially to target young vapors. So, are we really supposed to believe that flavors such as bubble gum or cotton candy are helping adults make the switch from smoking cigarettes? And then if those flavors don't sound so bad, other youth-targeted flavors like cinnamon roll, peanut butter cup, and Riffs, Riffs on pretty much every sugary cereal in the breakfast aisle, of a grocery store. So really here targeting teenagers. And we'll continue with our introduction. We'll look at vaping THC and a couple of other things in our next lecture. And so that's all for the introduction for today. So you stay tuned as we continue to go through this to help people to quit vaping. As I said, share the videos if you would. Viewing this on YouTube, you can like it, subscribe, not so my name gets out there, but so that we can help people with these things. But thank you so much for being with us here, and we'll see you next time. Until then, everybody can stay away. I'm Dr. Cooper, and I love you, and I appreciate you.